Miss Chapel.
Hey, FaceTime, Facebook, to all of our social media family. Hello, hello, hello. It is Monday night and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. So we want to just tell you guys to check in, and invite all your friends and family to do the same. Share, 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 because Couch Conversations is on. It's Monday night. And what is Monday night? It's time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. We're going to go around the table as we always do, just introducing everyone that's here. And we're going to start with Dr. Pete. Why don't you introduce yourself to everyone that's here on this evening?
Hey guys, I'm happy to be here tonight to discuss any questions you guys might have. I'm the Director of Medical Support Services at Near North, and we're excited to be here.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Dr. Terry Mason, better known as the urologist for the stars. Go right ahead.
Hi, thank you, Nikki. I'm Dr. Terry Mason. I am a retired urologist, and among other things that I'm retired from. And I'm always honored to be able to serve in this capacity for the great congressman of the Congressional District, I almost said William, Danny K. Davis.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Very good, very good. Dr. James Miller, the man who said that I sometimes threaten him to be here, but you know it's all out of love.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. James Miller, and I've retired from clinical practice after 40 years, and currently just involved with health education and youth mentoring on the west side of Chicago, mainly in the Austin district. And I'm so happy to be here tonight to entertain and to give as much healthcare information that I can. Hopefully what we say will be beneficial to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. To the weight loss guru, that's Dr. Tony Hampton.
Definitely happy to be here and on a mission to not just help people I see in my clinic, but people like yourself who are watching us tonight, think outside the box and find other ways to improve your health. So if you think a little differently about health and the things that you've done, I think we can give you a lot of tips on how you can get to your ideal state. So happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. I want to say hey to David Kelly and thank you for sharing the video along with your friends and family. To my coworker, Dr. Douglas Graham. Dr. Graham.
Thanks. I'm also a retired physician. I'm a rheumatologist. I worked in the western suburbs of Chicago for many years. About a year and a half ago, I retired and went to Washington, D.C. to work with Representative Davis in his office as a congressional fellow, and I'll try to answer your questions if I can.
Great, great, great. So Linda Johnson has just popped in. Hey, Linda. Linda's saying good evening to everyone. Remember to share. I see Kathleen Jackson has made it in here. Hey, Kathleen, how are you? Good evening to everyone she shared. See, we're just going to jump right in. It's a general conversation night. And a question that we got earlier was exactly what is lupus?
So that's one of the diseases that rheumatologists specialize in terms of diagnosis and treating. And it's one of those unfortunate sets of circumstances where you have a susceptibility genetically to respond to something. Now, normally when you get ill, you go through a cycle, and this is when the cycle doesn't shut off. And the body begins to attack itself as if it's trying to get rid of a virus. And certain immune systems are more susceptible than others, but there are environmental causes. So it's a combination of both what you inherit from your parents and what you get exposed to as you go through life. We're not clear whether it's just an infection itself, or it could be something environmental, like a pesticide, chemical, air pollution, or something else like that. And it's a disease for which we can't really pin down the cause, so there really isn't a specific blame we can assign to something. We have newer treatments for it. And it's really been really fascinating to be a rheumatologist because we've made more progress in the last 5 years developing treatments for this than we had in the preceding 60 years. So that is something that we do have treatments for, but unfortunately not a cure for yet.
Yeah, Doug, I agree with you. And I would just like to add to that if people can think about your immune system as something that's supposed to protect you from foreign invaders, if you will, or things outside of your body. But lupus, the body is somewhat tricked and it attacks itself. So that same immune system that's supposed to protect you then turns on itself and attacks its own cells, our own cells. And that's primarily why most of the medicines that we use are what we call are anti-immune medications that stop your immune system from working, in which then that causes lupus patients to get sick because they're on medicine that then suppresses their immune system to control the lupus, but then it makes you susceptible to other infections.
And I'll only add that I just had a patient today who came in, and she came in with a rash on her face, and it just had this look. And my colleagues would know, we think about this, what we call butterfly rash. And it's basically a rash that kind of comes around this part of your face. So of course, I'm not sure that's what she had, but it's nice to have these things in your head. So it's really one of those things. She didn't have a fever and she wasn't having fatigue and other things that you think about, but it's nice to know that there are things that we can do. So for this patient, I ordered tests like a SED rate. So your doctor may order a sedimentation rate. They may order an anti-nuclear antibody test. And those are tests that kind of guide us to that possible diagnosis. And then once I kind of do those tests, if I see that those tests are positive, then I would refer them to a unretired Dr. Graham to provide some further guidance, because he would be more expert at knowing what the next steps would be. He would be more expert and appropriate to use the medicines that are used for lupus. So we work as a team. And and again, the training he has in this area is way more extensive than a primary. So primary docs like myself and Dr. Pete have to kind of, do that type of work. And then we rely on our specialists to do the balance of it. So if anybody's hearing this conversation and they're concerned, you may want to start with your primary care doc, and then they can kind of start the path for you.
And if you want something a little different, one of the things you might want to do, there's a book by Dr. Goldener, who is a neurologist and on the East Coast. And she wrote a book called Goodbye Lupus. And I think if you have it, you might want to take a look at it. I'm not recommending it as a cure-all, but it is another approach, because many of the medications that we use for treating autoimmune diseases may have some issues. So just take a look at it. And she has lupus. She's the physician who had lupus and decided that she wanted to take a different course for the treatment, and she did a great job. So just take a look at it.
Is this something that affects people of color more than any other population?
Unfortunately, this is true. I mean, both the men and women of color, those of West African descent and those of Latinx descent, are more likely to have lupus than those who are of Western European descent. And it tends to be more severe as well. And that's probably based on the genetics of having to live in those environments and having immune systems that were protecting them from the infections that existed in those environments before they were transported to North America.
Wow. Now, we know that diet plays a big part in everything that we do. The diet is secondary. I mean, your diet is the next thing that keeps us alive. Does your diet have a lot to do with lupus, or how this happens, or if you have issues or anything with lupus? Does the diet play a part?
Can I call you back? That's a very, very good question. And initially, we had some concerns that were some certain kinds of things that might cause lupus, like alfalfa sprouts. I don't think that we've had a lot of support for that. We had some concern that some over-the-counter medications that echinacea might make it worse. Just in general, the American diet is pretty unhealthy. And if one were to look at some of the contributing factors why lupus is worse in North America than it is in other places, it's because we've got too many things in our diets that we don't need: salt, sugar, saturated fats, and red meat. But
I was just Well, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go
No, I
ahead.
was just going to piggyback and say we spend a lot of time in this forum talking about wellness because it's really the gateway to it's like marijuana. It's the gateway to other things, right? So um, diet has a incredible impact on your body in terms of inflammation. So you need to eat diets that are anti-inflammatory, rather you're doing a plant-based diet or a low-carb diet like I promote. Number one. Number two, if you have a leaky gut, which I didn't know about until I did functional medicine training, and leaky guts then allow your body to absorb things that could be harmful. Your body then consider those large proteins, as an example, as foreign, and then you make antibodies, and those antibodies predispose you to getting autoimmune conditions like lupus, and then just toxin exposures in general. And then when you have toxin exposures, it causes more gut damage, which leads to autoimmune diseases. So what are toxins? Well, they're environmental toxins, like living on the south side and seeing, fog in the air, but it's also in your diet. What are they putting in the food? When you eat the foods that have toxins in them, then you predispose yourself. So it's really, one thing I tell people is that it's really you have to look at your life in totality. Lack of sleep is a toxin. Stress is a toxin. So what you do is mitigate those risks by reducing all the things that you can do in your life to reduce your exposure to things that will predispose you to later in life having these types of things happen to you. So make sure you get your sleep, make sure you're keeping your stress down, make sure you're eating right, make sure you fast sometimes. If you do all those types of things, then you'll greatly reduce your risk for things that can harm you, like lupus.
The other thing I'd like to add is that I don't want people to think that these are all different sorts of things. This inflammatory situation is not, it's not a separate kind of entity. It's something that we live with. I mean, Chicago has a population that's about 20% African American, but we accounted for 60% of the deaths from COVID. And if we look at what you see as a common thread, it goes back to when Mari Gallagher did her report on food deserts and looking at the differential distances between places that had good foods versus the ones that did not. And you hear this common thing, whether it's from Dr. Miller or Dr. Tony or Dr. Pete or any of us, about inflammation. Well, what is inflammation? This is stuff that when it goes in the body, it does a few things. And one of the other things, to piggyback on what Dr. Tony said, was that you also change, not only do you cause leaky gut, but you can also change the flora. That is the kind of bacteria that are growing in your gut. And many of these bacteria are protective. And when we eat certain foods, part of what they do is destroy some of the, or do not permit the growth of the protective bacteria in our gut. And therefore that causes problems for us. And it may have a role in a lot of these other diseases that we're being exposed to or that we hear about. So the point I'm trying to make is that we don't suffer but from a bunch of different diseases. We suffer from the different manifestations of one disease or a very few diseases. And at the core of that disease is inflammation. There's a good article looking at when we talked about trimethylamine oxide, which is one of those very potent inflammatory agents. And when we look at the difference in dietary patterns of two groups of people, those that ate plant-based diets versus those that did not, there's a different group of colonies of bacteria that grow in the gut. And those different bacteria either are going to create an environment to help with growing the kinds of bacteria that help us or growing the bacteria that hurt us. And we have to get used to this idea. In fact, Tony, I'm getting away from the word diet because it has die in it. And unfortunately, that's what's killing us, is our diets. And so to give Prince Asiel credit, I now talk about livids. And we need to talk about those diets, those ways that we eat that promote living. So we want to start talking more about livids than diets.
I'm not going to mention anything about medicine too much, but I didn't want the day to go by. Coach Prince Osceola has his 80th birthday coming up on Sunday. I had promised to stop by because his children are having a little birthday celebration for him. So I plan to stop by and say hi to him as he celebrates 80 years. But I did want to say thanks because we had such an outstanding day on yesterday at the tennis center, providing people with the opportunity to get vaccinated. The state of Illinois is one of the leading states in the country in vaccinating its people. And so I want to commend the governor of the state. I want to commend the mayor of the city of Chicago, the Cook County Board, because this cooperative collaboration is producing a kind of result. And on yesterday, I know that Dr. Miller was actually there yesterday morning at the tennis center. Dr. Meyer was there yesterday. And we just had a whole plethora of volunteers, volunteer physicians, volunteer nurses, volunteer technicians giving of themselves in such a way on a Sunday. You know, my daddy used to say, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. And so we saw a whole bunch of sermons. And if we didn't see sermons, we certainly saw sermonettes. And so I want to say thanks to all of the volunteers. And it was so gratifying to see so many of my Alpha brothers who were out helping, and of course the Omegas and the even a Sigma 2 got slipped in the bunch. There was a Kappa or so. And so the fraternities and sororities, there are a lot of folks who think these are just social groups remembering their college days and playing and having fun and high-fiving, but they do much more than that, and they have done much more than that. And we were very pleased to have the national president of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity with us and with the group. So we just had a wonderful day. And I wanted to say thanks to all of those who made it happen. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks, Near North. Thanks, Howard Brown. Thank everybody. I've got to leave. I'm not going to be able to stay the rest of the time because we're in the process right now of trying to put together what we call earmark. It's a little bit of earmarking that we're going to do. So I've got to run off. But thanks to everybody. Have a wonderful evening. And I'm going to go and do something else. Thank you all.
Thank you, Congressman.
All right.
Thanks, Congressman.
Have a good evening.
But you know,
Okay.
want to definitely say hey to Martha. I see that she's here. Mary Ballinger also says good evening to everyone. Nellie King is here and she's saying good evening to Linda Johnson. She says, Dr. Mason, what is the station you are on Sunday? So when you get the opportunity, if you can type into the chat the station that you are on Sundays, that would be great. So we can definitely share that for Miss Johnson. That's, you know, Kathleen Jackson said once again that yesterday was outstanding and that she was excited about it. Virginia Knight is here. She says afternoon, all afternoon. So we talked about that diet and how you have to have a diet of things that are not inflammatory. And you were talking about leaky gut and what the leaky gut was. Did we ever kind of explain what a leaky gut was?
Tony.
You're just a little
Oh,
muted,
I'm
Tony.
sorry. I was a little trying to deal with technology here. So, yeah, leaky gut is a very simple concept, actually. Imagine you have these your gut absorbs a lot of nutrients, and in order to protect your body, the lining of your intestine literally has like channels through which things can be absorbed, and they're really tightly bound together. So they're really designed to only allow certain foods to come into into your body, essentially. So rather it's having the wrong bacteria in your gut, as suggested by Dr. Mason, if you have the wrong microbiome, because there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. And so if you have because you're eating certain foods that are unhealthy, you may shift your body towards a microbiome that's not good. It may be what you eat. So if you eat foods that are inflammatory, I would just put the bucket of processed foods as an example, with all these different components, MSGs and all this type of stuff. These types of things are irritating to your gut. And when you get that irritation, all of a sudden, all of these things get absorbed into your body that can be harmful to your body. So the goal is to, try to heal and repair your gut. You do it by eating the right foods. You do it by having reduced stress. And then there are certain things you can eat that may be helpful, even supplements. There's things like DGL, which is a type of supplement you can consume that helps to repair and heal your gut. There's things like slippery elm, which are supplements that you can take that will heal and repair your gut. Most doctors in conventional medicine are not fully versed on this. You need to find sometimes a functional medicine doctor, osteopathic doctor. They've been trained a little bit better to help heal guts. But the goal is, once you heal your gut, then you're less likely to have allergies. Think about taking antibiotics, which may help fight an infection, but maybe in the same moment, it may destroy the good bacteria that you need. And that good bacteria was actually there to kind of help keep your gut in good shape. So a lot of times you'll see doctors, my GI gastroenterology colleagues will sometimes, while they're treating you for something like Helicobacter pylori, the bacteria that can cause ulcers, they may then say we need to take some probiotics to then replenish the gut of the healthy bacteria that you'll need, which will then allow your gut to heal. So there's things that you can do, but I just want to caution people that very few conventional medicine docs are, versed in these areas. I'm actually still learning this stuff myself. And as I've learned, I found that, man, instead of giving somebody a medicine that is going to help treat their condition just with antibiotics and things like that, I have other tools in my toolkit that'll help them heal and recover. So, and another thing I want to speak to is that when you think about what you're eating, sometimes when you have a little irritation in your gut, it may be your body's way of telling you that maybe that's not the best food choice for you. Everybody is different. And sometimes you have to, your body is trying to talk to you. So don't force your body to love something that it won't love. Just listen to your body. And if you have upset stomach, you may want to do what we call an elimination diet and start eliminating things that are harming you, and then consuming things that don't. Let me give you an example. I think Brussels sprouts are very healthy for the average person. They have a lot of nutrient that are very good. Now, for me personally, I just have problems with Brussels sprouts. So I can just try to force myself to eat Brussels sprouts and take Beano and do all the things you're supposed to do to tolerate it. Or I can just eat green beans instead. So to me, that's just a common sense kind of decision. You don't have to eat everything on the list of healthy things. You listen to your body, consume stuff that don't bother you. And because we all eat a limited number of foods anyway, you just want that limited number to be whole foods that are healthy. So that's just my basic overview of what a leaky gut is. It's a little bit more complex than that, but I just wanted to give a little sense of what it is.
I just also wanted to add to what you're saying, that what we have to do is stop looking at our body as parts. It all works together. We have depending on who you read, anywhere from 50 to 125 trillion cells that make up the human body. Some of those are skin cells, some of those are muscle cells, some of those are hair cells, some of those are bone cells, some are kidney cells, some are gut cells, so on and so forth. And if you think about, and we talked about this at the restart meeting the other night, if you think about it, our job, all of these trillions of cells, let's say it's 100 trillion cells, they all need energy to function. And where do they get the energy and the nutrients from? It comes from what we put in our digestive system. The entire purpose of our digestive system, from the time that we put stuff in our mouth and chew it to the time it's exposed to acids in our stomach and the churning action in our in our stomachs and in our small bowel, the entire purpose of this entire machinery is to extract the nutrients that will feed these 100 trillion cells in our body, and also take away the waste products from all those 100 trillion cells. So when we're eating, what we do is going to either help these cells do what they're supposed to do, or it's going to hinder those cells from doing what it's supposed to do. And I do that because I'm trying to get away from this compartmentalization of what you can do for the stomach or what you can do. No, what you do good for one is probably going to be good for most all. And what you do that's not good for one is probably not going to be good for most all. So when you hear us here on this program talking about food, where I'm coming from, particularly when I think where Dr. Tony is coming from, and most of us, is we want you to begin to eat those foods that help provide the nutrients and the right environment for the 100 trillion cells that we need to breathe, our hearts to beat, our kidneys to function, our bowels to move, our eyes to see, our ears to hear, so they can get what they need to optimally do the work that they have to do. And this segmentation of trying to put things in these little buckets is really, really not the right way to think about this. Not at all. It's just like when it snows tomorrow, if it's going to snow tomorrow, everybody's going to be affected by that snow. Not just a few people, but everybody. So just think about that. When we do good things and when we think good thoughts, and I'll say this and close, is that we have to stop thinking about food only in a physical realm. We have to think about the foods we eat mentally, spiritually, as well as the foods that we eat physically, because all of them can have good and adverse effects on us based on the way that we consume these things.
Awesome point, Dr. Mason. Awesome, awesome point. Especially when you talk about the food that we eat mentally and spiritually. Awesome, awesome point. Linda Johnson says, Dr. Hanson, what would be the best food for detox elimination?
So it's really, I want to flip that in a different direction and say, well, what is it that you're trying to remove from your diet? I think the first thing you want to think about is, what are the things that are likely to harm you? And we all kind of know what those things are. Certain foods are more allergenic than others. So the first thing you want to do when you do a detox program is to remove the things from your diet that are most likely to cause you to have like allergic reactions. Those would be things like dairy, eggs, fish, shellfish, corn, believe it or not, peanuts, soy. In other words, what are the things that people are really having issues with as a general rule? And then how can I eliminate those things from my diet? So that's kind of like the first part of this process. And then once you kind of get to that point, then you think about, well, what's the next step? Well, you want to think about thinking about what are the triggers. So if you have specific things in your diet that triggers you, you want to remove those things. And then you want to, and when you're actually trying to heal, believe it or not, you want to have protein. And you can, there's certain types of protein from plants. There's certain types of proteins from animals. And what you want to do is support your liver, because your liver has a lot to do with amino acids and things like that. You want to support it in a way. So you want to eat so as you start to add things back to your diet and you eliminate all those allergic things, you want to have quality foods to eliminate from your diet because you're trying to support your liver and your kidneys. The liver and kidneys are the parts of your the organs that are in the business of doing detoxification. So I would, and just to get a feel for this, I know that when in my functional medicine training, if you just do functional medicine detox plan, if you look that up, maybe a PDF, you'll actually see a whole program of things that you can do to approach detoxification. The best detoxification, I want to just say this out loud, is what you do every day, right? So it is important that you maybe if you're sick and you're trying to kickstart, it's good to go through a detox program. You may want to do that in a supervised way, because if you're diabetic or something like that and you start doing all these things, your sugar may plummet and all of these things can happen. So you want to really do this supervised. But I would actually suggest you think about what you do on a daily basis. And that's why I'm really a big advocate, as my colleagues are. How am I eating on a daily basis? And if you do a really, 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 really good job on a daily basis, you'll find you won't have to be detoxified because you live in a detoxified life. So that's how I would approach this. But I think it's a great question because, again, the conventional training did not really prepare us to talk about even the word. My brother Peter tell me we don't even talk about the word toxin in medical school. We don't talk about that word, but yet if we don't talk about these things, we will not know how to detoxify our patients. And it's a real thing. You go, if you sweat, you'll remove toxins from your body. So maybe a sauna like they use in Japan as a routine, those folk have less toxins because they do things like that to remove them. So elimination is not just about your food, it's about things like sweating and other things that you can do to be healthy.
Yeah, I want to also mention, Tony, I agree with what you said. And I know you mentioned about water. Water is a big one that I think it's so ubiquitous that people forget about it, right? But I have to remind my patients about drinking water, the effects of drinking water and the effects of being dehydrated, and how the state of dehydration forces your organs to function harder than they need to. You can't mention one organ that can function normally in a dehydrated state, which most of us are. The other thing is detoxifying from stress and lack of sleep. I think those two, which we sort of forget about, but sleep is so important to your body and the function of your body and what happens during sleep, and your cells regenerate, something called apoptosis, while you're sleeping and in the presence of a rested state. And then of course stress, and stress produces these hormones that are meant to protect us on one hand, cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, but on another hand, over time and chronically present, they can cause harm to our organs, to our end organs, heart, liver, kidneys, brain. And so we want to be cognizant. And if you need to go get therapy, get therapy. If you need a good friend, get a good friend. If you need to laugh, but you got to detoxify from those things too.
I would only add, if you're going to detox, don't retox.
Come
What do
on,
I mean by that?
Come on, Bishop.
No, church, Bishop. Come on.
Because see, we get into this gimmick nature of things.
Yes.
These gimmicks, and that's all they are, is gimmicks. Because if you did the right thing, you wouldn't need to. And I'm not saying detoxing is bad, because Lord knows we toxify enough that we need to detox. But then we turn right around and retox. So the detox didn't do you any good because you turned around and retoxed. And maybe you didn't even detox long enough to get the toxins out, before you start retoxing again. So get out of these gimmicks. A lot of this stuff is gimmicks. And, you know, and you got to remember that myself, I was not trained as a physician, and none of the physicians on this panel were trained to manage health. We were trained to manage disease. That's what we were trained to do. And so, and I don't know, but Dr. Miller will know, we were at the same medical school at different times. But the information that we got on nutrition would fill a thimble and it wouldn't even be half full. So we got 40 minutes of nutrition in 4 years of medical school education. Just think about that.
I want to speak to just a little myth that is going to hurt some folk. And that myth, I had a patient today who came to me and was doing quite well, but was a little confused. And she was so focused on calories. And I just, my brain was like understanding, because we live in a society where they say calories, calories, calories. But I want to be clear. When people struggle with their weight, it's a hormone problem. It's not a calorie problem. And what I mean by that is it's an insulin problem. So that's a hormone. And I wanted to bring that up because I was so perplexed, because she gave me some of the things that she was focused on. And it was like calorie, calorie. But anybody listening who understands, you can't overeat broccoli. You can't overeat spinach. And guess what? If you have 1,000 calories of spinach and 1,000 calories of sweet potato pie, who you think gonna gain weight? You have to be a doctor or a researcher to understand that calories, this law of thermodynamics, and even when you go back to the microbiome, which is the gut bacteria, you have a Firmicutes bacteria and you have a Bacteroides bacteria. Bacteroides is the one you want. And if you want to be firm and cute, you don't want to have the Firmicutes bacteria. But guess what? So if you're sitting next to somebody who has a whole lot of, Firmicutes, and they're eating exactly what you ate, exact number of calories, guess what? The one with the Firmicutes is going to gain weight and the one with the Bacteroides won't. That's reality. Metabolic rate. Some people got a metabolic rate that's a little higher than the next person. It has nothing to do with calories. So I'm saying this to say, if you're focused on that and you're finding you're struggling, that's the reason why. And I wanted to bring that up because they didn't teach us none of this stuff in medical school. And it's very frustrating that they train us to heal people, and yet they don't tell us the primary tool to heal people. I shouldn't have to go to obesity school. I shouldn't be getting a master's in nutrition. I should have got some of this stuff in school, because guess what? How many of my colleagues are going to get a master's in nutrition? There's 4,000 doctors in the freaking country who are board certified in obesity medicine with 1 million doctors. So guess what? The rest of them don't know about this stuff. So Dr. Mason, I'm certain, had to go outside of regular medicine to learn all the stuff he knows. So guys, listen, you almost have to take ownership until the rest of the world catch up. See, we can't wait. We can't wait until our families are dead to learn this information. You're gonna learn this information through us and other resources, as Dr. Mason has suggested, and stuff I suggest and my colleagues, and you're gonna get healthy, but you can't wait for the mainstream. And I'm gonna tell you something that's really funny. I made a video talking about the dietary guidelines. Me and Dr. Mason fuss about the dietary guidelines always. So I make a video with Nina Teicholz, who wrote a book that, she deals with the nutrition coalition. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna try to promote this video a little bit. So I went to a resource to promote the video, and guess what they said? We can't promote the video. So when you start speaking truth to power, they don't want to hear it. And so we're not afraid to stand before the mic, stand before the camera, and tell you the truth, because that's the only way you're going to heal. So that's my sermon for today.
Well, amen.
And a woman.
At this time, we're going to ask Dr. Maya Green and the choir if they could give a selection. That's what's next on the program.
Back then, I'm going to sing Bread of Heaven, feed me if I want some more.
There you go.
You know, it's really not funny.
Yeah, it's not. You're right.
It's really not funny because there is no value proposition for health in America.
That's right.
Because nobody makes money off of healthy people.
That's right.
And there's no money in really curing the sick people. Because if you really cured them, then they wouldn't need these medications. And if you think about it, we got medications now. And as we go into the allergy season, my brother takes one that's $6,000 a month.
Ooh.
For the biologics.
Yeah.
6,000.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so and I know I don't want this to be the Dr. Tony, Dr. Mason show today, so I'm gonna shut up. It's gonna be hard, but I'm gonna be quiet.
But no, Dr. Mason, you made a great point when you said that there is no money in healthy people, just like there is no money in people not taking the vaccine. So I just wanted to add that tidbit to all the people who are still on the fence, talking about, you know, they're wondering what's going to happen, or they're still looking for additional information. I still only have 2 arms and 2 eyes. I'm just saying. So there is no money in you not taking the vaccine. But there is thousands of dollars in you catching the virus, hundreds of thousands of dollars in you catching the virus. So know that's where it's at. You know, Melly Mail, my sister friend, Melanie Winston, says, great information. Karen says, good evening to everyone. Angela Underwood says, that's right, Dr. Mason, lifestyle changes. Yes, thanks, Dr. Pete, you and Dr. Mason. I am on a behavior change for excellent health. That comes from Linda Johnson. Kudos, Linda, for that behavioral change. Kudos to you. Angela Underwood, also Angela, Dr. Pete, and Dr. Mason. Dr. Tony Hansen and Dr. Mason. So Angela Underwood is trying to start something. I'm going to read her question. But Pete already laughing because Angela's trying to start something. Angela says, are there any concerns that you have with the preservatives and chemicals that are put in meat, such as chicken? Now, Pete and Maya and Dr. Miller and I, Maya, sit back. Because we're about to go on the ride of our life with Dr. Terry Mason and Tony. We're going to sit back. Dr. Miller, put your wife up there right now. We're going to sit back. And
I'm going to keep it simple.
Watch out,
let me say this about just, you know, grass-fed. One thing I do like about organic, grass-fed, pasture-raised, and all those things is that they're more humane. So if you're concerned about animals and you're okay with the idea, we're going to wait to the end of life to consume them, that is a more humane way to go. From a nutritional perspective, you can take some beef that is grass-fed, and you're doing that because you're saying, well, I hear from the doctors who do this type of work that it's going to have a higher omega-3 content compared to omega-6. Omega-6 tends to be inflammatory, omega-3 is not. It is true that it is more omega-3, but compared to salmon, it's trivial. So if you're a meat eater and you're trying to decide, do I spend twice as much money at Whole Foods for grass-fed, organic, and all of that kind of stuff, I would argue that's not a good investment, particularly as it relates to omega-3. Now, we can also talk about the other things that they do to meat that may increase your risk for cancer if you're, all the things that we do to these animals, or antibiotics and all that stuff. So I think the first thing you have to understand is that when you look at randomized controlled trials, double-blinded, not epidemiological studies, meaning studies where they send surveys to your house, right? The evidence does suggest that when you do double-blind randomized controlled studies, in fact, I just tweeted a study on Twitter. Just go to Twitter and look for that video that was produced by the Diet Doctor. They'd had a new study that showed that if you do the right kind of study, In this room, our people are eating this type, meat. This other room, they're not, and you're comparing them. There was no evidence to suggest that that's going to cause harm. However, what you want to do is understand that historically, most of the studies that we've been making our decisions about have been the wrong kind of study. So I think that, so this is the way I look at it. You have to start to question, if you have people who are carnivores and they just eat meat, but yet their metabolic profile, meaning their blood pressure, their diabetes, and all these things we look at, cholesterol, waist circumference, are phenomenal. And then you have, that's a scenario you can't ignore. And then and they're doing more research on this stuff. So my point is, we have to be open to the evolving research that is suggesting that there's more than one way to solve the health problems in our country. And so, and it's actually pretty beautiful that we have a keto, low carb doc on the same panel as a vegan vegetarian doc, and we can actually not kill each other. But the point is, we have to be able to look at the science and say, how is it that you can be healthy with both approaches? And it's very nuanced. And part of it is archaeological. In other words, the Persians, they tend to do okay on grains. Clearly, the Egyptians did not. When they did autopsies on their bodies, they had all kinds of cardiovascular disease, and they ate grains like crazy. So the question is, one culture does okay. The Indians in this country were eating buffalo, and they did very well, and they were lean and tall and healthy. And then we brought this American diet to this country, and they have the highest incidence of metabolic disease and diabetes, definitely in America, and probably close to in the world. So I think that it's very complicated. And what I would ask anybody to do is to try to hopefully use us, but try to be more of a scientist about these things, because it gets very complicated and it gets very nuanced. But you have to recognize that there are healthy people taking different approaches. One thing me and Dr. Mason will always agree on is that processed food is garbage. If you eat real whole foods, if you eat a steak and vegetables instead of all the starchy stuff and the sugary stuff, you will probably be fine. Now, some patients will do better based on their historical perspective and how their body is made up with maybe a more vegetarian diet. So that's kind of what I do know. I know that anecdotally, meaning that based on my experience, I've taken so many people off medicines with the approach I take, and I'm sure Dr. Mason would argue that the other approach can do the same. The biggest struggle I have is that I struggle with communities of color, and I've struggled when I was a vegetarian for 8 years or so. I just struggled to get my brothers and sisters to look at that as a dietary option. So I was happy when I finally realized that there are more than one option. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to kind of, I'm kind of went on a tangent there, but those are the thoughts that come to mind when we talk about this topic. So the floor is yours, my brother.
Well, we're not going to have a debate. We can disagree, and without becoming disagreeable. And so that's where we're going to leave that right there.
Yeah.
I have very strong feelings, having been a real carnivore myself, like a porterhouse steak every day kind of carnivore. And so there are a lot of things that we have to think about. But what I would get back to is that our food supply, the sister asked about chickens, and she asked about beef. Well, if you were getting, and I think Dr. Tony may have alluded to this, but unfortunately, our chickens are so full of hormones and antibiotics and all of these other things. And the same thing is true with a lot of the beef. Is also, first of all, we feed these animals things that they're not intended to eat. Number one, the natural diet for our beef population is not corn or soy. You don't see cows out there eating corn off a cob, nor do you see them eating these other things. And our chickens, if you've ever seen a real chicken, right now, the chickens are really given so much in terms of hormones. And don't take my word for this. You can look this up yourself. And we are now seeing in our animal population the use of all this biochemical manipulation that creates problems even for those of us who eat it, that we may not be aware is attributable to the hormones that we're feeding the chickens, because we've changed both the growing cycle for a chicken. We are bringing a chicken from an egg to a full chicken in a much, much shorter time than is natural. And so we have to think that there's a price to pay for that. And because of all of the bacteria from the fecal material that are on the feeding lots, because we don't have cows walking out in the pasture anymore. That's not how this is done. There's these big, they call concentrated feedlots, where you have thousands of cattle that are on concrete, and there's lots of fecal. Don't take my word for this. Look it up for yourself. So there are issues where we have to give our food supply, particularly the meat food supply, more antibiotics for this reason. And for the fish, farm-raised fish. I know a lot of people love salmon, but if you get purely farm-raised salmon, it has color added, because the normal salmon eat an animal called krill, which imparts its pink color to the flesh of that fish. When you farm raise salmon, they don't get an opportunity to be exposed to that. So then DuPont makes a dye that they pour in the farm raised fish farms for salmon that then colorizes the flesh of the salmon. You might go see, in the old days, you would see in the discount area, when I used to buy this stuff, salmon that said color added. That's what that means. So there are a lot of things that, I mean, I grew up eating meat, and I think, but it wasn't a major piece of what we had to eat. We had beans, greens, cornbread, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Meat was about this much of our diet, and we had to work and do things too. So, I mean, I think that there's room for a healthy conversation about this, but at the other things, we need to understand that no medicine that we take cures any disease that we have. So yes, it'll make your blood pressure number better. It'll make your glucose number better. But if you don't change the way you eat, you will forever be a slave to those medications, because the medications will not, that's not what they're designed to do. And so I'm not advocating that you stop taking. I'm not saying that at all. But if you're going to think about how you could get off some of these medicines that are causing side effects that may be good or not good for you, you need to think about it. And the docs, I think I understand what Dr. Tony was saying, is that it's hard working with our people to move them from the heavily addictive eating plans that they're on. And I don't blame the people. I blame our industries that have created foods that have addicted people to them. And we know when we talk about, it's not me, the American Institute of Cancer Research, Tony knows this as well as I do, talks about the classifications for different meats, and red meats are in group 2, processed meats are in group 1, which are those definitely shown to cause cancer. Mm-hmm. They said that 1 hot dog or 4 strips of bacon increase your colorectal cancer risk by 18%. That's not Dr. Mason saying that. That's 800 scientists that got together and made those proclamations. So again, I said we wouldn't have the Dr. Terry hour because we have such esteemed colleagues on this panel. And so from now, I'm going to not say anything until next week. I hope.
So to Ms. Underwood, this is why, I mean, we love your question and we welcome it, but we love the fact that we have the vegetarian and the carnivore sitting here. So it's always interesting when we hear them share their thoughts together. Dr. Mason, thank you for putting me in a state of mind now that the steak I have in my oven broiling, I will not be eating after I heard the fecal matter they walking on. You just threw me. You threw me. You threw me with that one. But I am going to go and buy me some buffalo because I understand that's going to make you tall. So I'm going to give me some buffalo so I can grow. Want to say, Linda Johnson is laughing at us. She is. She says, laugh out loud. Curtis Jones says, thank you for the truth. Thank you. Linda Johnson says she loves you guys. She loves the panel. Sandell Scott says, good information as always. As always, good information. Virginia Knight lets us know that she recently went to Dubai and she thanks you guys for keeping her on target because she did not gain 1 pound when she was there, meaning she switched her diet instead. She switched her living. Is that what you call it, Dr. Mason? Her living?
I live it. Yes, ma'am.
Her living. And she stayed focused to make sure that she would not do or touch any of the wrong things. She wanted to make sure of that none of the wrong things. Sister Bonnie says, thank you. This is so good. Our question now says, will your diet affect your intimacy?
Yes.
Oh, okay, Dr. Mason. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hey, Nikki, what was the question again?
I think Dr. Mason, no, I was about to say, I think Dr. Mason answered, but no. Will your diet affect your intimacy?
Yes.
Dr. Maya?
We'll get into that. We'll get into that next week in more detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Maya.
No, I was just laughing at how quick Dr. Mason was like, yes, like what's the next question? Absolutely. And as Dr. Mason said, we'll get into it next week. 2 things. I just want to say, Nikki, Buffalo is not going to work. It's not going to make you taller. That's okay. That's the one thing. One thing, as in my medical opinion, I just want to clear up tonight. I don't think anything's going. There's not as Dr. Mason said. There's nothing that's going to cure that. It's just what it is. But hey, when you're going up, building a person after you reach perfection from one short person to another, what was that? Why would there be more of us? What would they do? Right? Yes. Okay.
So Dr. Miller, did you want to jump in on the yes?
Yeah, I'll say yes, and I mean there's a lot of complexity that goes into that, which we've talked about before in terms of vascular diseases that is affected by your diet, that does affect blood flow to those organs that is necessary to be part of your intimacy. So yeah.
All right, Doug, you think so?
Well, I'm going to say that if you're eating in a way that it causes your blood pressure to go up and you take medications, your blood pressure medications can definitely have an impact on your intimacy. So that's a good reason to change the diet to get off those medications. As Dr. Mason said.
All right. So that quick yes, Jack Lynch says great information and good evening, everyone. Sister Bonnie wants to explain, and as Dr. Mason said, that's a detailed conversation. So we'll explain that next week, and we'll let that be our first question next week, so we can go ahead on and get that out the way, so you can understand why you got to eat a little. Stop laughing at me, Tony. So you can go ahead and move on and move past it and start eating different, so you could have a better outcome when you eat different. I know you guys hate to hear me say this as always. I know you do, but it is that time. It's that time. So we're going to go around really quickly and we're going to ask our panel as we do on every Monday. And I thank you, Dorothy Murphy, for dropping in. We'll save your question for next week just as well, and what you're sharing with us, and we'll bring that back up next week. Want to say to our panel here, your thoughts until next Monday, as we always do. So Douglas Graham, your until next Monday.
Well, I would say that if you use a shopping list, don't throw it away, but keep it and use it as a scorecard. Take Dr. Hampton's advice and Dr. Mason's advice. When you've eaten something and it's on that shopping list, you can score it as to whether you felt better or felt worse. And if it makes you feel worse, look up what's in it so you can find out, are you getting vegetables, minerals, or nutrients? Or are you getting the stuff that's not helping you at all?
Okay, the scorecard. I love it. I love it. Dr. Terry Mason, your until next Monday.
Know that your health is your most important asset. and you should do everything you can to keep it as long and as vibrant as you possibly can.
All right. Okay, Dr. James Miller, your until next Monday.
Until next Monday, you've been given a terrific lesson tonight. And so we sort of let that happen, and hopefully that you got a great amount of information. And hopefully, I know it is complex, but what was given to you by Dr. Mason and Dr. Hampton is valuable information for you to process and to utilize as you go forward, because most people tend to think in terms of goals. They want to lose weight, they want to do this, and they eat according to what they think those goals are, as opposed to the real goal is living and being healthy. And I think that's what you got to begin. That should be your goal in terms of how you approach your life, and really not approach it on the basis of diseases.
Preach.
Tony, can you and Pete pass the offering baskets, please? Dr. Maya Green, you're until next Monday.
Until next Monday, I just want to say to Dr. Hampton and Dr. Mason, if we spend this and more time, it being a Dr. Mason, Dr. Tony show, so be it. You know, a lot of I'm a fan of men. I'm a fan of Black men. You know, and I always enjoy a time where the impartation of knowledge is going forward, right? And I just want to name that I'm here for it. If it happens this time, next time, not only because of who you are, but what you've done historically, for not only for the community, but so many other examples. I say that as a Black girl at some point, and now a Black woman, that especially specifically to you, Dr. Mason, making the space and the mentorship. And I'm one of them people, I've never, very few times have I directly said anything to you, in all of my career. We've just kind of been around, but there are people that talk a lot, to you, but there are people that kind of on the side still use that mentorship, because when you see another Black physician go forward, you're like, okay, if they can do that, I can too. So this and other times, and just historically for decades, you've been imparting things into the community and stuff like that. And if today is another day of that, I love that. I also love that we're taking this moment because doctors are doctors, right? People are used to us talking. I love being on a panel with people that can share, but all of us can sit back, Dr. P, Dr. Miller, Dr. Grant, we can all sit back and listen and learn too, and you don't find that in our community. Sometimes you get a lot of egos, sometimes you don't, but sometimes you do. So if this is a Dr. Tony, Dr. Mason show, so be it. I'm here for it, and thank you.
Not totally now, just for this, we're talking about just tonight.
Oh, tonight, if it organically happens again, then I'm just here for it,
Okay.
I'm here for the Black man shine. I'm here for it.
Girl, you just brought tears to my eyes. Girl, stop. Where's my...
Stop crying. No, I'm kidding. You can cry. It's okay. That's part of healing, and it's fact.
Because it reminds me of a song by Donald Lawrence that says, "Let me be spiritual." And sometimes we are led in a different direction, and we're led that way for a reason. Mm-hmm. When we allow the Lord to order our footsteps, sometimes He leads us in a reason. He leads us in a way for a specific reason. And the next day, He will give us confirmation of where He led us there. This may have been something you needed for tomorrow when you're seeing one of your patients. So that's the lead. But in that lead, I love the fact that we took the time to pin our flowers on Dr. Mason while he is here, because he has been phenomenal in his career. And I think that needs to be shared. I don't want you to go nowhere, no way, because we still got to go to the little Italian restaurant on my cheat day from Makito. We going. Okay, so Tony, I told him I'm going to cheat one day, because I'm going to cheat one day. Dr. Mason and I are going to this restaurant that we talk about all the time, because I got to have it. He hypes it up too much. So we are going. But it's important that you hear how you have touched the lives of people now today. You need to hear that because you have been phenomenal in your career, from being the director of the Chicago Department of Public Health to the director of a Cook County Department of Public Health, to taking your time every Sunday morning to teach African American men how to be healthy in their lives and keeping it, as the youth say, well, I'm youthful, as they say, keeping it 100. I appreciate that. I learned so much from you, even though it pains me every time I'm in the grocery store when I walk past the potato chip aisle, especially at the jalapeno chips. I understand how if I want to continue to live, I need to leave those jalapeno chips right there. I understand that. And the same goes for Dr. James Miller. The same goes for him. He's probably the only person who can tell me what to do and I won't be offended. He's probably the only person I'll listen to besides that, because that's the reason I be listening to you, I listen. But I be sometimes scared that Dr. Miller might hit me in my forehead, so I'll take a minute. But he's probably the only other person who can keep me on track besides James Harvey, who has earned his wings. So I appreciate that. So it really did bring a tear to my eye because I celebrate you both. I celebrate you are true trailblazers in our community, and you need to be recognized for that. If we don't make our own history, then there isn't any. And Martin Luther King shared with us one day, when we sit and be quiet about the greatness, we are just as guilty. So I appreciate you. Before I really tell y'all, let the church say amen. Come on, Dr. Tony Hampton, tell us short until next month. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
All right, before you, Dr. Hampton, I'm sorry, and I want to clarify one thing. Yeah. Oh, two things. Nikki, Dr. Miller told me to go find myself a seat yesterday when I was about to tune up. So you're not the only one. And I was like, oh, see, over there, got it. But the other thing.
Oh, well, at least he didn't hit you in your forehead. Let me tell you something about the Millers. They'll take that palm of their hand. Wait. You're not listening. They'll wear their forehead out you.
And then the other thing I meant to say too, and he's right, Dr. Miller, Dr. Mason, not only are you an example for up and coming Black physicians, you're an example for all physicians. A lot of times, I was saying that because I identify as a Black physician and stuff like that. But you're an example for a physician, no matter what color they are, what gender, across everything. You're an example of how it's done. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
And you all genuinely care. And I just want to say, Sister Bonnie then weighed in and says, yes, Nikki, you're right. That's real talk. The Millers will hit that forehead. You have to. So Maya, next time Dr. Miller tells you to take a seat, if his hand gets a trembling, get back arm's length.
He said, okay. He didn't do no hand. He just said, it's going to be okay. And it was, Yeah, thank you, Dr. Miller.
Dr. Tony Hampton, you're until next Monday.
Well, about 8 years ago, I was a vegetarian vegan. I was a vegetarian vegan for probably about 8 years prior to that. And during those years, I will absolutely agree that my inspiration, because when I looked at those documentaries like Forks Over Knives, I didn't see a lot of folk that looked like me in the documentary except for Dr. Mason. So he was actually my hero. And I actually told myself that I want to be like Dr. Mason. And that's one of the reasons why I got into this whole space of teaching diet and nutrition beyond the clinic doors, because I felt like you had to make an impact that way. So I've been preaching this stuff for probably 16 years. And although I've shifted a little bit more towards low carb and keto, I have absolutely changed. It's doctors like Dr. Mason who have changed my life. And one thing I want to say to any of you guys listening, in order to change and be better, you have to challenge old beliefs sometimes. So you may have beliefs about certain things, like I can't eat greens without cornbread, things like that, right? So what you have to do is challenge those beliefs and say, are those beliefs still serving me? And if you eat cornbread and your blood sugar go up, I think you know the answer to that question. So
does hot water cornbread make your blood sugar go up?
You know what? Let me finish my speech. What I'm gonna do with you? Okay.
Love her.
I'm going to do my best, trust me. And I want to also say, don't just trust the powers that be. I mentioned earlier that the dietary guidelines don't serve you. So,
Right.
what you're going to do with that. So I don't trust anybody. I always question. I don't care if it's the American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association. I don't care what organization it is. If my patients are not healing by your recommendations, I'm gonna go in a different direction because I can't wait for them to do it the right way. And the only other thing I want to say, I mentioned insulin earlier and how insulin is the reason why we struggle. So the question is, what do you do about that? And it's very simple. I just had a conversation with Dr. Jason Fung on my podcast. I stopped eating. So sometimes I just don't eat breakfast. I eat lunch and dinner. If you stop eating, you don't make insulin. And then I eat foods that don't make it necessary for my body to make insulin. So it's very simple. And then I keep my stress down and I get my sleep. Those are the things that you do to be healthy. So it's a combination of all those things. And if you take that message and say, where do I have gaps? And what time are you going to bed tonight? I know it's like 8:10 right now. Are you going to bed at 10, 11? And if you're going to bed later, why are you up? And if you don't get sleep, you won't be healthy. If you're watching the news tonight and you're stressed about it, why are you watching the news? So we have to make these simple changes in our lives. And if we do those things, all of a sudden, our bodies will heal and recover. So rather you're shifting in one direction or the other, that doesn't matter. I think we both have a path for you guys to heal. And I just hope you take that challenge.
Wonderful, wonderful. My brother from another mother, Pete, Dr. Pete Thomas. Your until next Monday.
Hey, I'm with Dr. Maya. I enjoy both my mentor and my line brother from Alpha Phi Alpha, Tony Hampton. I enjoyed to listen to y'all talk. One, the community needs it. I need it, and it's just refreshing to hear that and to hear our community given so many pearls, so many options, and ultimately the goal is to reduce inflammation, and they're giving you opportunities and options to do that. So it's a good thing. And then I would be remiss too if I don't mention that yes, Dr. Mason is a big mentor of mine and several other docs. I know we were all at the county together. And when Terry became our chief, I remember, this is no lie, I'm serious. I told Terry about this. This young Asian doctor came up to me and was like, do you know Dr. Mason's about to be the chief? He's going to save us. I told you, he's going to save us. And he believes in God. He's going to save us. I was like, well, yeah, I'm happy you're excited about that. I'm thinking only, I thought, that we were the only people that was excited about Terry being our chief, but it wasn't. And so Terry just speaks toward your sense of hope, your sense of like reaching out to, like, I remember you coming to all of the health centers, all of the centers that a lot of the chiefs didn't come to. They didn't want to come to the South Side. You were at all those sites. Of course, Project Brotherhood was there. You were already at these sites. So, but we appreciate that, and we're gonna tell you that. And of course, Dr. Miller, I'm gonna tell you, I was a mentee of yours, from a distance. I knew about you, knew you were one of the old heads that I should aspire to be like. So, just giving y'all much respect. I hope next week we get a chance to touch on epigenetics and how epigenetics impact disease development, particularly in this inflammatory state, where how behavior and environment impact the expression of genes. And so, and that is also, in this time of George Floyd and several stress that's happening, and how stress can impact how your body will either form a disease state or not. And so we need to be aware of that. But it's called epigenetics. We'll talk about it next week.
All right, wonderful, simply outstanding. Another great Monday night where you actually learn that health is the true wealth. That's it, Couch Conversations with the Doctors. Right here every Monday night from 7 to 8. Don't miss it. Tell a friend, everyone to be here. We got to remember to stand up and mask up. And as we ask everyone on every Monday night, few things I want to share with you. We have great opportunities for making sure that you are vaccinated. I want to throw a few dates out here to you to make sure that you are aware of what's going on. You can share with your family and everybody can be there and be out. May 9th, which is around that Mother's Day, we're going to have a special event for our moms and everyone, and we're going to be vaccinating and giving out great gifts on May 9th. Don't forget May 16th, we'll be doing something, and most of all, Juneteenth. Juneteenth, we're going to have an outstanding event. So we are in the work of making sure that we plan some great things. Maya, I see your finger up. You got your church finger up, Maya?
No, that wasn't the church finger. You said Juneteenth, and I just had to, sorry.
Oh, June.
Just black. Just black. Yeah, keep going.
We have a couple great things up, and we may have a surprise this weekend. We may have a surprise pop up this weekend, so stay tuned. We'll let you know on tomorrow, actually, if we're going to have a surprise vaccine pop up this weekend on the west side of Chicago. So we want to make sure that you are aware of everything that we're doing. We'll make sure that it's posted, that it's here. But most of all, we are so close. So close to being out of these masks. We are so close. If we continue to do these following things: one, get vaccinated. Two, wash your hands. Take these two little things here that you have and wash them really, really good. As Dr. Maya says, don't forget to get in here. Don't forget to get there with washing those hands. We want to also make sure that you social distance. Stretch your arms out, and if someone is touching you or you are touching someone else, just ask them to scoot over just a little bit. Just a little bit. We are so close. Get the vaccine so we can hug and touch once again. And then we want to make sure that you wear your face covering. Remember to wear your face covering over your nose and mouth, as you can see how it's demonstrated here, over your nose and mouth, making sure that nothing is getting in there that shouldn't be. And before Dr. Pete says, where is his mask? I
That's
have
right.
it right in the bag.
Where's my mask?
I got your mask. His Couch Conversations mask. I have it. So over your nose and mouth, make sure that you do it. We love you guys. We'll see you next Monday. Until then, same bat time, same bat channel right here. And Maya, you have one too. Have a good evening. And Dr. Miller and Dr. Mason. Everybody got one. Okay.